Hi, my name is Nasim Yazdani and I'm a mental health therapist. This is the second part of my YouTube video on our sensory word. I'm going to share my screen again. Now, we all know that our fight, flight, freeze responses are all stored in the nervous system, which starts in the brainstem. Therefore, if external forces such as trauma is received by the brainstem, the whole sensory brain is set out of whack. This is why traumatized children have sensory processing issues, because their brain hasn't wired up properly in this area, which has resulted in them being stuck in their brain development. Pretty much not much development takes place in higher levels of attachment or reasoning when children are stuck in their brainstem development, and therefore they exhibit behaviors consistent with children much younger than their physical age. We've seen plenty of children in our line of work who are in their physical age of 10 to 12, but exhibit behaviors of a 7 or an 8-year-old. Now, sensory regions of the baby's brain come alive in a caring environment. If children are not picked up or nurtured, their brain doesn't mature in appropriate regions. For example, the vestibular fluid in the inner brain moves when the baby is being picked up. Rocking, in another example, is a deep muscle calming technique that is good for proprioceptive sensory development. Play is a good proprioceptive sensory stimuli that helps with appropriate development. If babies haven't been rocked, haven't been played with, they just won't develop this sensation properly. Now, trauma in adults presents itself with higher sensitivity to external sensory information. They often use drugs and alcohol to suppress the sensory input received from their surroundings. However, what happens with drug and alcohol use is that they actually block away other senses such as love, happiness, and equilibrium too. Technology and technical devices can also lead to sensory issues. The visual and the audio input received from these devices can put the child's vestibular sensory processing out of balance. Now, what do we do about all that information? First and foremost, stabilizing the carer's mental health is the key. If the carer is stuck in their own issues, they will never be able to adequately respond to their children's needs. The concept of mirror neuron comes to mind. Neuron mirroring is a proven theory that helps us understand that whilst our neurons can sync with other neurons in our brains, they can actually sync up with other people's neurons in their brains too. A mirror neuron is a neuron that fires both when an animal acts and when an animal observes the same action performed by another. They operate almost like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. This explains the development of language, society, and culture in a broader example. But just going back to what we're talking about today, we know that children's brains can sync up with their primary caregivers' brains and mimic their behaviors as well as their emotions. Almost like you can almost immediately sense your partner's anger or frustration when sitting across the room from them by just looking at them without exchanging any words. Children tend to wire up and sync with their primary caregivers' emotions. And therefore, it is absolutely vital for the primary carer's mental health to be looked after before you can see any changes in their children. Now, the second thing is sensory attachment intervention, being another good method that we can use to respond to children's sensory needs. It focuses on addressing the sensory issues exhibited by children. This approach is meant to calm the fear response in kids. One effective way of doing this is by addressing the developmental needs of the emotional brain through sensory activities. The key is to find the emotional age of the child and respond in that way. Stroking a dog or a horse, creating sensory boxes for kids, putting things like feathers, stress balls in a box and getting them to decorate the box themselves, changing their routines and introducing new routines and new sensations to break the old patterns. These are all part of attachment intervention techniques. There are some proprioceptive sensory balancing activities that you can use as part of sensory attachment intervention. Wheelbarrow walking, heavy blankets, massages, deep massages here we're talking about. You can find these on videos of these on YouTube. Big bear hugs, games such as guess the letters with fingers on the back, comprehensive clothing that would put pressure on the muscles and the joints, drumming, going to the gym, exercising can address developmental needs of the limbic brain through regulating big emotions. If we have children from 9 to 14, get them to draw a square in air using an imaginary straw. This helps with development and with movement of the neck, as well as balancing and breathing or self-regulation. Vestibular sensory balancing activities are things like racing games, sit and stand, swimming, duck, duck, goose, being able to be playful, joyful, play catch, do sports, dancing. Tactile sensory balancing activities in younger kids could be things like playing with a pack of rice, use socks and literally fill it with rice. Hide small toes under the actual rice and get them to go look for it and find it. For all the kids, place letters, for instance, inside the rice. Get them to play with shaving cream, vibrating toys, tactile balls, sensory toys. They may like things like goos or Play-Dohs, or may enjoy playing with hard toys, depending on the child. Vibrating toothbrushes, soft touches. Touch is a bit tricky though. Got to be careful. A child who hasn't been touched will have trouble when being touched. They don't like your kisses and they will usually rub them off. Now, other things that you can do, bottom-up approaches, they have always been helpful in helping people cope with sensory issues. Grounding, EMDR therapy, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, singing, dancing. Bottom-up is always the preferred way to go in terms of addressing sensory issues rather than top-down approaches such as cognitive behavioral therapy or mindfulness-based cognitive therapies. Helping children to self-regulate, getting the child to understand how important it is to breathe can be really powerful. Pretending to cool the food down as an activity by getting the child to blow on their pretend soup, getting them to tell stories like huffed and puffed and blew down the house, or mirroring breathing and role modeling, blowing imaginary birthday candles, blowing on bubbles, blowing a ball through a straw. These are great examples of how you can get children to do breathing. It will be good to have a predictable daily schedule and every day have a routine of breathing techniques. Get the child to choose what techniques she wants to use. Maybe even add those to routine charts. Now, dyadic developmental psychotherapy, which is an attachment-focused therapy developed by Dr. Daniel Hughes that highlights the importance of play and physical touch in rewiring the brain and activating sensory processing receptors in the brain. It principally involves creating a playful, accepting, curious, and empathetic environment in which the therapist attunes to the child's subjective experiences and reflects this back to the child by means of eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, and movements, voice tone, timing, and touch. The therapist usually co-regulates and co-constructs an alternative biographical narrative with the child to help them feel more safe within their environments and be able to build a trusting relationship with adults around them. This work is done in conjunction with families and primary caregivers. It is a family-focused approach that is used in repairing some of the damaged parent-child attachment issues. Theraplay recognizes that play can nurture the internal sensory processing and development. It focuses on playful interactions between carer and the child. Theraplay recognizes that play can modify a child's functioning through creating new patterns of activities. Row activities, back and forth play, fast and slow movements, repetitive activities can address developmental needs of the brainstem by actually rewiring and regenerating the brainstem. Drama and movement therapy, or drama therapy, as it is often called, is an expressive form of psychotherapy which uses creative mediums in order to communicate and explore feelings and issues. Drama therapy is not about performing, and no previous experience or interest in performing arts or drama is necessary for it. I hope that you've enjoyed the blog that I've prepared for you. And if you do have any questions, please email me at reception@mindmattershealth.com.au.